Welcome to another episode of 3 on 3. My name's Tony Trena. I'm an editor here at Hodinkee. This time around, I've got two of my friends and colleagues with me, our very own video producer, Jonathan, and you may recognize our West Coast editor, Brandon. Along with us, we've brought three of our favorite titanium watches under $10,000. We're gonna debate which one's our favorite and why, and at the end, we might even pick a winner. Before we get into the specific watches though, I wanted to ask you guys what you look for in a titanium watch and what makes it appealing.
You know, I guess I'll say it. I'm looking for lightness. I'm looking for a watch that is comfortable, tough, and most importantly, light. That's the biggest reason why anyone, I think, would buy a titanium watch.
Yeah, I think you're right with the anyone because that's probably one of the reasons I'm looking for a titanium watch. But I would add that I would like purpose. Like there has to be a reason why the watch is titanium and not just for practical use.
I'm gonna pick up on a word you used, which is purpose. To me, titanium is a more modern material as far as its use in watchmaking at least. I think Citizen was the one who first started using it in commercially available watches. A lot of indies started to experiment with it soon after that. But to me nowadays, it's a modern material that's befitting of a modern everyday sports watch, which leads into what I chose, but we'll get to that in just a second. Brandon, I first want you to introduce the watch that you chose as your favorite titanium watch under 10 grand and give us just a quick opening statement as to why it was your choice.
Yeah, so I chose the Grand Seiko SBGA 211, also known as the Snowflake. In a sea of titanium watches, I think what Grand Seiko did here with their use of titanium, it's like a core element to the actual design of this watch. It was made out of titanium for a legitimate reason, and it's a design reason. Snowflakes are light, so this watch is light. It also sort of embodies, I think, a lot of the things that Grand Seiko is known for. We have the nearly proprietary, extremely accurate spring drive movement, and then we also have the beautiful dial texture that's inspired by nature, and that's very Grand Seiko. So,
Jonathan, your choice?
So I went with the Zenith Defy Shadow. The Zenith Defy, when it was originally released in the 60s, was meant to be a tough, accurate, everyday watch. 300 meters water resistant, more than the Rolex at the time.
it's more than the dive watch at the table.
I know, but we don't need to get into that.
Are we arguing history or are we arguing modern titanium watches?
We're arguing best. So that's what's important to me when I'm buying a watch is I want something that feels unique and special and something that sings. You can talk about the specs and what is maybe better all you want, but truly the heart wants what it wants, and this is what the heart wants.
What about you, Tony?
I chose the universally beloved, critically acclaimed Tudor Pelagos 39, introduced towards the end of 2022. The long-awaited downsizing of the professional modern tool dive watch, the Pelagos. This is the more sort of commercially oriented iteration of that. It's 39 millimeters, it uses titanium, it's light as can be on the wrist, and as I was setting up at the beginning, to me, titanium is a modern material that I think is kind of designed to be worn every day because of how practical it is. And to me, this is almost the epitome of a modern everyday sports watch that is intended to be used by the general public. Brandon, if you could just introduce us to the specs of the Snowflake for those who may not know.
Sure, the SBGA 211 is 41 millimeters in diameter. It's a fairly svelte 12.5 millimeters thick, and lug to lug we have 49 millimeters. Do we want to go over movements at all or just the sizing?
Let's hold on to the movements
Okay,
for just
yeah.
a second.
Chomping at the bit to talk about that
So-
spring drive.
I know, but yeah, 41 millimeters. I know it's a little bit larger than you guys' watches, but I know you guys are kind
And-
of small.
I do want to talk about this grade 5 titanium, right?
Yeah, so mine's grade 5 titanium, which is more scratch resistant than, 4, 3, and 2. I'm not sure what you guys' are. I might be winning in that category, but we'll see. I would love to hear.
Ever so modest. Jonathan, introduce us to the Zenith Defy's specs.
So we agree that's a big watch, right?
It depends on your wrist size.
Sure, yeah. It's a big watch, we agree. This is an excellently proportioned 37 millimeters across, 13.6 millimeters tall, less than a millimeter thicker than yours. I know what you're about to say, but you don't even notice because of that domed crystal, which is clear, I might add.
You know, I do agree with you there. The crystal does look nice, and I think a lot of the thickness is coming from that, so I'll give you that.
Thank you,
There
Brandon.
you
I
go.
appreciate that. Microblasted titanium all the way around, including the ladder bracelet. It is most resistant to wear, and when it comes down to it, if you wanted to fix any scratches, it's the easiest to refinish, and that is the only finish on this watch, so there's no masking, no taping, just a little zip zap, and it looks as new as the day you bought it.
I'll take your word for it on that, but this has got a 39 millimeter grade 2 all brushed titanium case.
What was the number again? Grade, what was it?
That is a lower number. It looks the same.
Was
but
it
is
3? Was it
lower.
4? Or even 5, like the Snowflake?
So it's grade 2 all the way through. It's entirely brushed. Let me get to why I'm not concerned about that though. I think it hides the scratches, any that you might get, pretty nicely. Not that I'm worried about that anyway. I mean, this is a sports watch. I want to see it get beat up a little bit. I'm not too precious about my Zaratsu polishing or my microblasted titanium. I want to see this thing get beat around a little bit, and I think it's perfect for that. It's about 12 millimeters
I can appreciate that.
in thickness, just a touch under, 47 millimeters lug to lug. The one thing I'll just get ahead of, as any good politician would on the narrative here, is that the clasp is about 46 millimeters long, and it's got an odd 21 millimeter lug width. Quirky measurements, I'll grant, but because of the wearability and durableness of the bracelet and just how well the Oyster style bracelet wears, I'm not concerned about it, nor have I been concerned about it. This is just the epitome of an everyday sports watch to me. I wanted to address the price real quick as well. So mine comes in at a $4,700 MSRP, the Grand Seiko Snowflake.
So this one's $6,200.
Okay.
And this one is $7,400.
So $7,400 you said, new. Okay, so I'm just gonna reorganize these real quick. We've got 4,700 here. You said 6,200?
6,200.
Okay, that's not bad. That's second. And then we've got 7,400 over here, it sounds like.
This is not to scale by any
Way over here to scale. I wanted to get into the movement real quick. I'll start with mine. Again, because I think, just like the price, I think the movement in mine offers something that yours don't. For example, fully mechanical, not fully mechanical, chronometer certified. The Zenith is not chronometer certified. So this is the Tudor manufacturer caliber 5400 in here. It's got about 70 hours of power reserve, clean, no date, chronometer certified. Beyond that, it's just, you're gonna beat this thing up and it's gonna keep on ticking. Why you wouldn't wanna wear this all weekend, I can't even fathom. I can fathom why you wouldn't wanna take this out to the kids' baseball game on Saturday or out to the club on Saturday evening.
Those polished edges look awfully pretty. It would be a shame if somebody were to scratch them.
Real shame
Well, it is
if something
titanium,
happened.
and it does fix itself over time. And if you do want to bring your watch back in for some sort of refinishing, it is going back to Japan, and the skilled artisans there will bring your Z-word polished right back to you.
This is kind of a game we were gonna play, is kind of drink every time Zaratsu polishing is mentioned, and I think we're up to...
You're at 2.
We're up to 2
I'm
or
purposely
3.
not saying
We're
it.
up to 2 or 3.
Put a counter on the screen.
But I wanted you to talk about the movement of the spring drive movement in here real quick before we talk about the Zeniths.
So if you want to talk about movements, this one is actually the only one that's kind of special out of the 3. You guys have mechanical, regular mechanical. Yeah, they're automatic. Yeah, this one is
Reliable.
COSC certified. But if you want accuracy, we're going about like plus or minus 1 second per day with this watch with a 72-hour power reserve. And when you look at the second hand, of course, you have that smooth glide. Because why? Because time is continuous. There's no mini ticking. It constantly goes. You have a 70-hour power reserve. This one beats you by 2 hours. Same, I think. But yeah, that's the movement.
Okay, and then
But tell
let's
me
talk about the Zenith Defy real quick.
Let's. Please, I couldn't wait. It was all the way over here, as you so lovingly place it in a level of its own.
Price-wise, yes.
Price, yeah, and otherwise as well. This is the Elite 670 movement inside, beats at a hearty 28,800 beats per hour. Recalling on the exact plans of the original watch released in 1969, but with modern manufacturing, a modern material, Tony, titanium, arguably rendered in the best expression of the metal.
And as far as the movement, you've got that tricky date window at 4:30 there as well.
I feel like that is a perfect place on the dial because it's unintrusive. You know exactly where it is and where to look for the date in a color matched window, and it doesn't interrupt the dial.
You know, Jonathan, speaking of date, I mean, yours might be camouflaged, but I also have a date. You have a date. If you want to know the date, we can know the date. But
And
I
Tony
don't
can
know
ask
if,
us.
Yeah, if you want to know the date, Tony, how do you figure that out?
Yeah, I would ask my friends. I would say, you know, there's just so much history in the Zenith and placing that date window at 4:30, the El Primero, and they've matched the date window to black to match the dial. It even fits in pretty well with the hour markers here, which are kind of retro cool. So as far as 4:30 date windows go, I'll give you a point. It's not
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
one
too
of the
bad.
best executions, I
point,
think.
Brandon.
It's one of the best, I
1
think.
point.
If you don't know that it's just looking at it, it still has that symmetry.
Yeah.
It looks good. I like the
And
date.
speaking of symmetry, we have a power reserve. And at what time is that power reserve? Is that 7:30 or is it?
So you know what a common problem is when you have a mechanical watch? You just don't know how much
Mostly
power-
mechanical watch in your case, sure.
You don't know how much power is in it. So you just end up winding it for no reason, right? Just to make sure that you're powered up, you're leveled
So
up.
you love your watch
But-
so much, you're
but-
wearing it so infrequently that you have to keep winding.
But with the Snowflake, you know exactly how much power is in there. Symmetry is great and all, but I think that having a power reserve indicator, especially one that's as finely finished as this one, like if you really get in there with a macro lens, it is one of, I mean, everything on the dial is amazing, but the power reserve, at least it looks nice. It might break up, it might break up the symmetry.
Sounds like you've granted us something there, yeah.
Oh.
So now that we've talked a little bit about our choices, I thought maybe we could rotate them a little bit, get impressions of each other's watches on wrist, what we like, what we don't like. We can be honest about them.
They're all titanium, but this one does feel a bit lighter than the Snowflake. It could be because of the gaps in the
Might have a lot to
length,
do with
maybe,
it, yeah.
and the size as well. Mine's 41 millimeters, and it's kind of the max size for my wrist. And 37-ish, 36 would be like the minimum size that I would wear. The only thing that I sort of have issue with, and this is a pro for a lot of people, but maybe a con for me, is these gaps in the bracelet. I don't know if I can get used to that. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of funky to me. But I think I'd have to try it on and wear it give it some time. But yeah, that's the only sort of thing I'm seeing that's throwing me off.
Yeah, that's a tough hurdle to climb for sure.
Yeah, but I do love, I'm looking at it now, and I do love these like indices with like the stacked sort of
They call they call those like Toblerone hour markers.
Toblerone
Yeah.
hour markers. I do like that a lot, and I think I mentioned it before. If you're gonna put a date window on here, I think it's a cool sort of location for it, and it blends in nicely with the dial. Yeah.
Okay, Jonathan, pick up the Pelagos, tell me how you feel about it. If it's boring, it's only because it's so
It's
ubiquitously good, I
well,
would say.
it's a great watch. I did spend some time with it, and it's a really comfortable dive watch. It's a really good size. I have small wrists, so 39 like hits the sweet spot for me. It's a great execution on a timeless. Like there's a reason there are so many of these because it's a formula that works.
Put it on the wrist, let me know how it feels.
Let's put it on.
Fits like a glove.
Good glove, yeah.
Oh, you guys
could
like have
say.
the same wrist size.
Yeah, it's a well done dive watch. This could be the only watch you wear for the rest of your life. It does its job very well. You can't fault that as much as I would try to. You can't fault that.
Long clasp on the bottom, how's it feeling on the
Yeah.
wrist?
It's not my favorite. Objectively, it's not my favorite. It's pretty long. It's a long boy. But it's not as intrusive as you would think. I have like a 6 1/4, 6 1/2 if I have a light beer that afternoon. Wrist.
I don't think it looks that bad. Yeah.
It's not intrusive, but I do wish it was a bit smaller. But you know, what can you do with a dive extension?
If you're criticizing the clasp, you're really criticizing the inclusion of the diver's extension, which I think is probably a valid criticism to make as well because of the other technical diving things that they've removed from the 42 Pelagos as compared to the 39, but they left that one in there for one reason or another. I'm gonna pick up the Snowflake for just a minute. It's not the first time I've handled a Snowflake in my life, nor do I assume it'll be the last. I did want to give you credit, you know, it's 41 millimeters and 49 lug to lug, but it wears relatively well. The thing I did want to note about the clasp, First of all, Grand Seiko is not known for making the best bracelets in the world. This one at least tapers, which some don't. There's no micro adjust at all in the clasp here, and the micro adjust is the typical pin system in the Zenith, despite the fact that it costs much more. I think we can call on all brands that at this price point, these are all 5 to 10 basically. I think we need to be looking for toolless micro adjusts at this point. I think that should be.
Yeah, I would agree. I really do appreciate the painstaking recreation of a vintage watch, but that is something that, I mean, we put a modern movement in it, we're using modern materials. Let's use a modern micro adjust.
The other thing I wanted to say in the positive column about the Grand Seiko is just the titanium itself. They've finished in a variety of ways, alternating polished and brushed surfaces. Pelagos is entirely brushed on every surface, on the bracelet and the case. And while the microblasted titanium and blacked out titanium is cool, it's all one thing. There's a little bit more visual interest here in the case.
It's very pretty.
And the bracelet, which makes it very pretty. It helps it toe the line a little bit in terms of if you're gonna wear this every day, there's a little bit of elegance, a little bit of sports, dare I say, because it's majority brushed, I would say. So it does make it work as an everyday proposition. Okay guys, we've had some great discussion about our favorite titanium watch picks under 10 grand. If you had to put your money into one of these watches, which would it be and tell me why?
I'm not gonna say it's a tough call. I think for me it is kind of easy, but I do see value in the ones I'm not choosing. The Pelagos is, I think, classic. It's also safe. It's also the lowest priced out of the bunch. The Zenith, on the other hand, is the most expensive of the bunch. I do like that it's unique. I do like the callback to the original. But of course, I'm going to pick the Grand Seiko SBGA 211, the Snowflake. For me, I mean, this is not really a choice that you're making with your head. You're making it with your heart. And I have a connection to Japan. I do sort of find myself really caring about detail, and I think Grand Seiko sort of embodies that attention to detail. I like the romanticism with the tie-ins to nature. So my heart says this watch right here.
It's a good choice. So there's 3 watches on the table, and they all make me feel different things. They all make me feel some good things. They all make me feel some uneasy things. What it really comes down to is how a watch makes me feel. And this thing is so cool, it's so interesting, it's so unique that I have to go with the Zenith Defy Shadow. It's really surprised me, even just the time that I've spent with it since I picked it at first sight. I've never seen anything like this, and you're not going to see many of these out there, which is why this watch gets my pick. It gets my imaginary $7,400.
It's a great pick.
It's a great pick. I'll note that you two brought these 2 watches to the table, and some heated, spirited discussion later. You're still choosing them as your watches. A little hard-headed, perhaps, by the both of you. I'll show myself to be a little bit. I'll show myself to be a little bit more malleable now because I brought the Pelagos to the table, and I think I'm the most open-minded of the bunch because I'm about to exhibit that I'm changing my mind with a few caveats that you've already addressed. The Zenith, I think, is my favorite on the table here. I'm going to tell you why. The Revival Chronomaster Shadow from a few years ago, maybe my favorite Zenith. If I were to go slightly off the board, I would not hesitate to pick one of those up pre-owned. If we're being honest, I think you can find them a little bit cheaper than the $7,400 price tag. I don't want to harp too much on the price point, but that's the only thing that holds me back because it's fun, there's nothing like it. It's vintage inspired, which, as you may have picked up on in a few of the things I said about the Pelagos especially, pulls at my heartstrings, and they've done it in a really considered way here. It's a cool look, and it's not like anything else you're going to find. So I've considered it, and I would change my mind if perhaps we could go halvesies on a Defy.
You'd have
Sure.
to.
I think that might be the sort of the best of all worlds.
That's a compromise.
Something I do love, actually, I'll mention this just before we close it out, is that we've brought 3 very different watches to the table. If you look at them together, it actually makes a fun little 3-watch collection. You've got your funky vintage inspired thing, you've got your dressed up Grand Seiko, and then of course your dive watch / your everyday tool watch. A great little 3-watch collection that displays everything that titanium can be in a modern watch. I'm glad we arrived at some sort of majority rules situation with us agreeing to go splitsies on a Zenith Defy. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
I got it on the weekends, by the way.